But if you don't have the right people believing that, they're an unstoppable force, you're not going to get very far.
Welcome to Season 8 of Bridge the Gap, a podcast dedicated to informing, educating, and influencing the future of housing and services for seniors. The BTG network is powered by sponsors Align, Nick Map, ProCare HR, Sage, Hamilton Captel, ServiceMaster, The Bridge Group Construction, and Solinity, and produced by Solinity Marketing.
Bridge the Gap in 3, 2. Welcome to Bridge the Gap podcast, the senior living podcast with Josh and Lucas here at Spring Nick, San Diego. We have a great guest on. We have access to so many big thought leaders here and so many leaders in the industry. And we want to welcome Sara McVey. You're the CEO at Sequoia Living. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
So excited. We were fortunate to meet you through one of our very own Bridge the Gap ambassadors. And we heard through the grapevine, as we're just getting to know you, is that you're really a champion of culture. And I'd love to learn more about you, the inspiration for you to get involved in senior living. And when did you first understand that culture matters?
I was thinking about that. And when I graduated from high school, my first out of college job was Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was in sales and marketing, which that means is that you wear a suit and you go to work and you wash cars and then you go pick people up and you give them cars and you talk them into the collision damage waiver, which still to this day, I highly recommend that you get.
She's always selling.
Yeah. And, my boss at the time called my house and I was living with my parents because it was my first job. And my mom answered and she said, Sarah, phone. And it came down, talked to him, hung up. And she said, who was that? And I said, that was Doug, my boss. And she said, that's so interesting. He said you work with him, not for him. And it didn't occur to me at the time that had anything to do with culture. That was a good thing. But my mom was just so impressed by that. And I have thought of that so many times since that time. And I think, I didn't even know that culture was cool at that moment in time, but he made me want to work at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, just kind of how he showed up. And I've really kind of pulled some of those principles forward in trying to not be a hierarchical type of organization. It's not about position or title. We're all in this together. We all have hearts, we all have heads. Let's bring them both to the table. In other capacities, I've been working in senior living quite a long time. It found me. I wasn't looking. And another organization that I worked with quite a long time, was over a decade, is in Chicago. And they really invested in understanding culture, understanding people, creating a movement. And that really got me prepared for where I am now, which is Sequoia Living. And we really started our culture work during COVID. And we didn't really know it was culture work. We just were coming together as an organization in such a different way than we had been previously, solving problems together, coming out of our little silos. We have 7 different locations and we had a call like everybody else did pretty much every single day. I always say COVID for us was good, because we really came out the other side a much better, stronger organization.
I would like to dive into that a little bit more. So first time Nick attendee as well.
Yes.
We're here at Nick. I have to believe though, I think you acknowledged you guys came through a very difficult time stronger, but there was probably some fabric you already had woven into place because I would imagine if you didn't have some of the fundamentals right, that would be a type of an event that tears your team apart, because we did see that through COVID, that a lot of organizations didn't make it. And then some came out stronger on the other side. You guys were one of those. So, we're here at Nick. It's a lot of transaction talk, right? The debt and the equity, the capital markets meet the operators. Everybody realizes the value of that. What we're all here for is because of what happens with the teams at the community. So tell us what that means for you from a practical blocking, tackling some of the strategies, if you don't mind giving us some insight on that.
For us, it was, keep it simple. We actually started our culture work with Gallup, which is, an international company. We worked with them for about a year, and we learned a lot. And what we learned is it's complicated. and you really need a partner that can distill the complicated into something that anyone in any position can get their heads around. So we shifted gears from Gallup to Drive. And Drive's value proposition is they have worked in the industry and they understand the people, the caregivers, the dishwashers, the facilities person, the valet, the security. And they really they helped us make all of this very accessible. I think the other thing too is my background is in marketing. And so my brain thinks in slogans, in mottos, in battle cries. And so we didn't go through we didn't hire an agency. We landed on this mantra of never stop growing. And Sequoia is uniquely positioned to really own that mantra because of the trees, right? And Sequoians are one of the largest trees. In fact, the largest tree can fill like a football field. They're huge. They live for thousands of years. So they're super resilient. And they actually need wildfires to actually, improve their resiliency. The other kind of fascinating point is their roots actually grow out. So they create community around them. So for us, we were like, this is like so perfect. People wanted to do a little wordsmithing, like we shouldn't say never, it's so negative. And we're like, no, we need to say a bold statement. So never stop growing for us at Sequoia Living is really about how do we continue to get better at being better. Then if we decide to grow bigger, we can do it from a position of strength, but it's not how do we get bigger out of the gate. It's really how do we keep snacking on sacred cows and, kind of not white knuckling the status quo type of thing. And that was something that was really accessible to everybody and not just certain positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations too. I can tell you're an excellent marketer because that was really not only the meaning and the definition, but how you just unpacked that. That was pretty cool. So one thing I kind of picked up on, I'd love to know your opinion. I think there's a lot of culture initiatives I've tried to implement, through the years, some better than others, but you actually brought in an outsider on more than one occasion.
We did.
And, it made me think, in probably every other area of our lives or our children's lives, if we want to improve in something, we find an expert and it's a coach or somebody that we hire to help us and hold us accountable, maybe see things that we can't see.
Yes.
But one thing I have seen, I've been guilty of, is trying to identify and fix things your own in your own organization. It seems like that was part of a very intentional strategy to get an outsider's perspective.
It takes a lot of humility to go through culture work because it really holds up a mirror to the behaviors that are stunting your growth. And as a CEO, you have pride, right? You don't want people to say, well, they're saying this or they're saying that, or they feel like communication could be better or all of those things. You really have to just be a good listener. And, I would say in my role, it's not about me leading it. It's about kind of lighting the way. And everyone else really needs to be the lead. Like all the other staff really have to be able to lead it. So, there's a whole bunch of things involved in that, but I think having a third party that comes in and can help you look in the mirror and really see what's there versus you seeing what you want to see. The other thing too for us is our board got very involved in the culture work and said, how do we get in on this never stop growing? What do we need to do? And they went through a whole process last year where they looked at policies and onboarding and recruitment for board members and elections and all of those things. And there were no sacred cows. And we kind of threw everything up in the air and came out this year and are doing things in a totally different way. So that really sent a very strong message to the organization that this isn't just a program of the day or the year, that this is really something that, we want to build on it. I think the other part too is you have to pay attention to all the things that you've been hoping nobody sees. So a lot of times we have people that are really good technicians. They're subject matter experts, but they can be a little bit of a nightmare as a team member. And then you rationalize and you say, but he's so great. He's so he really knows his job. And then someone else is like, yeah, but he's really hard to work with. So you have to embrace the and. You have to have a great attitude, and you have to have the right aptitude. You have to have mission, and you have to have margin. It's not a negotiation. So it forces you to stop negotiating with yourself.
Yeah. So outside organization, but top-down implementation, right? I mean,
it wasn't an exactly top-down. We actually went through a value survey where all of the staff weighed in on the values that they would prefer. They were asked 3 questions. We had 91% participation, which we've never had that level of participation.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And they're the ones that came up with the values, the 3 values. So it's a 3-word mantra, never stop growing. We have 3 core values now, which are not the most exciting. I will say that. I was kind of hoping, as because it is, again, my orientation, that we were going to have these really cool, jazzy, exciting values. No, what we have is accountability, caring, and teamwork, which is great because it's not about me. It's about what people are like, hey, this is what I want to see showing up in the culture where I come to every single day. And I'm like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. And what accountability means to me and you might mean something totally different to our housekeepers or our dining services. And that's where the work came into play, was figuring out, well, what would that look like? What would teamwork look like? What does caring look like? And that's really the fun part of all of this. It's not just words. It gets translated into behaviors. And so even for our corporate office, it's like, well, what does accountability look like? People were like, well, when you're on a Zoom or a Teams call, turn your camera on. And, like I've said, it's like there's 43 muscles in your face. I need you to use one on the call, like you're doing right now, smiling and nodding. Sometimes people will just look at you the whole time. It's like, so is this going in? Are you loving it? How are you feeling? And so it was asking people to show up differently for each other. And
I would imagine it's a bit of a journey, right?
Yes.
How long since you kind of conceived
the
notion, right? It's a journey, right? So how long have you guys when did you start this? Where are you in the process?
Yeah, we started this about 2 years ago. I would say we're still really early on in the process. We have culture committees at all of our locations. It's an unfinished process.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to be okay with the messiness of it. And kind of the differences from one location to the next, because they all want to do things different.
Yeah.
Because their locations are different. The one unifying concept is the culture statement of Never Stop Growing. How it shows up in your communities and your work on a day, that is all you. How it shows up for me. It's, me coming to a conference like this is about me wanting to keep growing and stretching my mind and kind of doing things that I haven't done before, and really be open to being a little intimidated when you walk into a room of 500 people you've never met. And I think that's, being part of an organization that celebrates that and supports that is pretty cool.
So 2 years into this forever journey.
Yes, forever.
Are you seeing some tangible outcomes that you could put a finger on and say, this is helping us in this area, and we think we either are or will see ROI that we can actually share with people? This has made us better.
Yeah, and that's a tricky part of the culture work, is because it's this invisible DNA of your organization that you have to tease out. And probably 2 years ago, I was really fixated on, okay, we need to improve our operations so we can control fees. And then the feed forward that I got from staff is like, you're stressing us out. Like, we don't want to that does not spark joy. And so this last year, 2024, I didn't even talk about it. I talked about, let's recognize this. How are the residents doing? How are staff doing? Who's getting a scholarship? Who's, furthering their education? It was like I had to really reprogram myself to not, I still ask about occupancy, of course. I still want to know how we're doing financially, but it wasn't a lead sentiment in my remarks with anybody. And we had the best year ever because my energy was going into all of this culture work and was really making sure that, one, I wasn't standing in the way.
Yeah.
And two, the people that were really, driving it felt like they had the support they needed. And I was showing up when I needed to show up, because it really is something that's near and dear. I really do believe that you can have a great strategy, a phenomenal vision and mission statement, but if you don't have the right people believing that, they're an unstoppable force, you're not going to get very far.
Well, I think you might be on to like a lot of the secret sauce, as I would kind of phrase it, bridge the gap.
Yeah.
As I would phrase it, between, you never lost the goal of what you need to achieve from a business perspective. But the way you translated that, the information, the education, the way you influenced that, it may be semantics, right? And different messaging and how you bring that to your team, who's got different motivating factors, right, than the transactions themselves.
Yes.
But that's what drives the transaction, right? And so I think that may be some of the missing ingredients when you look at an event like we're at right now, where it's a lot of transaction talk, but it's all sort of towards the exact same mission and goal, but how we communicate it has to be different, right? To the different stakeholder groups. And so, Lucas, we could probably sit here and talk for a long time with Sara. This is a really interesting conversation.
The culture topic is great, and really appreciate your insights here. So final kind of thought or question. I'd actually here at Nick, I had a student come up. Nick brings in some younger, hungry people to come and experience this. And I know that you are, as a part of culture is, recruiting and retention. So what would be your encouragement for somebody that may be here at Nick or listening to our program that's thinking of senior housing as a potential career opportunity? What would you say to them?
We talk about this a lot because a lot of our staff did not wake up and say, hey, I want to work in senior living. Once they do, they're captivated. And, we hear it all the time. It's like, I didn't know that I wanted to do this, but now that I'm doing it, I can't imagine doing anything else. I would just say, it's the fastest growing age group. And you're going to learn a lot because you're around wisdom. Every resident, every member, whatever you choose to call them in your organization, they have lived lives and decades that we have yet to experience. And I remember when COVID came around and one of our residents said, she was alive when there was the iron lung and polio. And, those are things that luckily we have not experienced. And they're probably the most generous generation. Where many of us struggle as leaders sometimes to provide feedback and feed forward that actually helps people grow. I will tell you, I don't know if it just comes with maturity, but they're able to just tell you exactly as it is. It's unvarnished and it's okay. It's kind of refreshing, actually. Yeah. And I always have said, even on like my toughest days where I'm, maybe delivering news about a fee increase or something that's somewhat unpopular, that, every question I get, every remark, every even what some might call criticism is helping me be an even better version of myself. It's like they may not be intending to help me be better, but that's exactly what's happening. And we're just so fortunate to be surrounded by that. And overall, I would say the people we serve absolutely love the team members, and the team members feel that. And I don't know many jobs that you can have where that's the case.
It's an honor to meet you, be able to speak with you here. I'm excited to follow you in the journey that you guys are on, shaping a lot of lives, shaping a lot of leaders and culture. It's what our industry is all about and we need. And so congratulations on all your success and continued success.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this podcast. It's very cool.
Oh, awesome. Well, thanks for your time today. And I know our listeners are going to want to connect with you and Sequoia Living. We'll put a link in the show notes, and you can also go to btgvoice.com, download this content and so much more. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear your comments as well. And thanks for listening to another great episode of Bridge the Gap.
Thanks for listening to Bridge the Gap podcast with Josh and Lucas. Connect with the BTG Network team and use your voice to influence the industry by connecting with us at btgvoice.com.